Hey, what's going on, guys? Owen Straley, Steelers Depot here, and coming at you with a new series I'm doing on the reviewing the 2019 Steelers cornerback position. So we're going to start with Steven Nelson, who I thought was their best cornerback in the 2019 season, and I think a lot of true analysts of the Steelers would agree. So we're going to look at it here. First, week 2 against the Seahawks, and the matchup all day was Steven Nelson covering the Seahawks' big, strong, deep threat in DK Metcalf, who was one of the best rookie receivers this past season. So we're going to see no safety help here, and Russell Wilson's just going to take a deep shot on Nelson, and Nelson handles it perfectly. So goes with a motor press, giving ground off the snap, and quickly gets to Metcalf's hip, turns around, locates the football, and squeezes Metcalf to the sideline. So there's no place Russell Wilson can put this football except a perfect throw on the back shoulder where Nelson's not getting to it. And with a good throw here, Nelson's going to pick this. So just perfect, sound positioning on the deep ball, and lets Russell Wilson know early that he's not going to be able to test Nelson deep with Metcalf. So later in the same game here, Nelson once again matched up on DK Metcalf, 3rd and 8. Seahawks driving, trying to tie the game up late in the second quarter, right before half. And Nelson, showing his awareness, knows that they're going to go for the sticks here and is all over this back shoulder throw. So again, playing situational football, understanding where the Seahawks are trying to attack, and all over Metcalf on this back shoulder, ends up going for what would have been a pick, but Metcalf does everything he can to stop this and ultimately gets called for the face mask, taking the Seahawks out of field goal range and keeping the Steelers in the lead before the half. So a big-time play. Just going into the technique of it, Nelson once again going with a motor press, gives ground, but aggressively gets into Metcalf's body at the catch point and ultimately undercuts the route and in position to make a play. Probably would have been a pick if not for face mask, offensive pass interference, all of the above by Metcalf. But just once again, Nelson gave the rookie fits all day and probably played him better than any other corner this season. So aggressive with the bigger receiver, and just an impressive play, big play right before half. So finally, third quarter here against the Seahawks, and they try Nelson again with Metcalf on a back shoulder, and once again, Nelson's all over it. Just, again, showing physicality against a much bigger receiver, gives ground at first before getting into his body, getting Metcalf to engage in hand fighting, and once the receiver engages in hand fighting, you've won the rep. Slows up, disrupts his timing, and he gets to look back at the ball before Metcalf even knows it's coming. There for another easy breakup, undercuts it. Good technique by Nelson, and a little more aggressive here than on the previous motor techniques, but still giving Metcalf the space and then before stunning him and getting into his body. And then finally, we'll look at Metcalf here. What is Nelson reading? Metcalf's coming out very slow. He's counting his steps here. So you almost know he's running a stop-type route, and a smart corner like Steven Nelson who's been watching film understands that and just showing his field awareness here. So good job stopping the back shoulder, gave Metcalf fits all day, and again, probably played him better than any other corner this season. So really Steven Nelson's breakout game with the Steelers and showed what it was to come for the rest of the season. So here, week 4 against the Bengals, and Nelson lined up in press coverage at the top of the screen against John Ross. John Ross is going to try to give Nelson an out-breaking release, sometimes called a diamond release, before running a slant, threatening him with speed, trying to get Nelson to open his hips so he can beat him on the slant. But Nelson does a good job moving laterally, staying square, always shows great feet out of press coverage. One thing I love about Nelson is quick feet in press coverage. So moves laterally with him, stays square, and is able to drive on the ball, ultimately laying out for an impressive pass breakup against John Ross. And just great eye discipline and great feet from Nelson, showing again why he can be a number 1 corner. So here, week 5 against the Ravens, the first clip we're going to see of Nelson so far in off coverage, as Willie Snead lines up in a cut split, so Nelson's not going to be able to play press coverage here. And so as Snead's in a cut split, inside the numbers, Nelson's going to have to line up with outside leverage here. So outside leverage, he's trying to take away any outbreaking routes. So with this sprint out concept by the Ravens, Snead's actually going to run a design drag all the way across the field. So out of off coverage, and especially outside leverage, very, very tough route for Nelson to cover. He's got to run with him all the way across the field and trail. And great pass breakup at the end by Nelson, great speed across the field. But what ultimately allows Nelson to make this play, he doesn't move backwards. And this could be film study, but this is also just good patience and good DB skills. Not move backwards. He reads the Snead's first move is lateral, instantly gets lateral, ready to chase right away, shows good speed, and ultimately the physicality at the end. And we'll see it from the tight, but just a super physical pass breakup by Nelson. And one of my favorite aspects of his game is good coverage skills, all the above, but he's a very physical corner at the catch point, and that's ultimately going to allow him to make plays like this. Snead has no chance of catching this with a physical breakup like that from Nelson. So here, week 9 against the Rams, and we're ultimately going to see a huge improvement in the Steelers defense from 2018 to 2019. 2018, they couldn't hold leads late in games, and it's because their cornerbacks just simply weren't good enough in man coverage. And we see here is the cornerbacks making reliable plays on the edge and gives them the availability to play a wide array of coverages late in games. So right here, bunch set, and the Rams try to get a matchup with Gerald Everett, the bigger receiver, on the smaller corner, and Nelson. See if he can make him miss and get the first down here. Nelson plays at the sticks once again, doesn't backpedal, doesn't move backwards, but he moves laterally with Everett. Mirrors him laterally before aggressively driving on the catch point, and by the time Everett's caught the pass, Nelson's already driving through his hips with an aggressive tackle. So we'll see it from the tight here, but again, these are the kind of plays, fourth quarters. This is winning football. This is winning defense, and this is the kind of defense that wins you games and wins you playoff games, is aggressive tackling on the edge and the ability to make third down stops, fourth down stops late in games through good coverage. So again, impressive here from Nelson and great tackling on the edge against a very big receiver. So once again here, minute 30, key situation, Rams driving, one possession game, Steelers up 17-12, and we're going to see more aggressive cornerback play from Nelson. So right here, Rams trying to set it up with a bunch set, create some distraction for Nelson to have to go through, and get a big receiver in Gerald Everett coming under on the slant. So Nelson, once again, is a theme with Nelson, good cornerback, doesn't move backwards, but he moves laterally. So moves laterally, mirrors Everett, and aggressively drives on him, making an aggressive play on the ball, both securing the tackle and playing through the hands for an aggressive pass breakup. So this is what distinguishes like average cornerback play from good cornerback plays. You're not always going to be able to get there for the clean breakup. So sometimes playing through the hands with physicality, like we see from Nelson here, this is elite cornerback play. Receiver has it caught, it's in his hands, and Nelson is aggressively able to get through. And just again, one of the biggest improvements from the Steelers defense. I don't know about you guys, but up until 2019, I've never felt comfortable, at least in the recent years, with the Steelers defense holding leads late in games since really 2010, 2011. And it eventually came back this season. And one of the major pieces of it was guys like Joe Hayden and Steven Nelson on the edge. You trust their coverage abilities. You trust their ability to shut down good receivers late in games. And we'll see it from the tight here, but not only good coverage skills, but you just love to see the aggressiveness from a small guy like Nelson and the physicality at the catch point to disrupt the route, securing the tackle, playing through the hands, and a physical and important pass breakup here on 2nd and 10, setting up a 3rd and long, and the Rams would eventually go on to turn the ball over on this possession. So week 11 against the Browns here, and Steven Nelson's lined up in press coverage against Odell Beckham Jr. at the bottom of the screen, and you'll see Browns just trying to get the ball in the hands of their playmaker, try to run a quick tunnel screen. Nelson's all over it, quickly get diagnosing, slipping this block by the O-lineman, and tackling OBJ with a nice wrap and roll tackle in the backfield. And it's good tackles like this on the boundary that you consistently saw from Nelson all year, and really doesn't get talked about as enough of a reason for the Steelers' improvement in the secondary, with a lot of the credit going to Minka, Joe Hayden, but plays like this with Steven Nelson really being able to shut down your number one receiver in all facets of the game. Later in the game here, Browns driving just before half, 3rd and 7 on the verge of the red zone, and Steven Nelson's in coverage against the Browns' other marquee receiver, Jarvis Landry, at the top of the screen. And we'll see, with a shuffle technique here, he's able to keep his eyes on Baker, keep Baker's 3-step, and drive on this route right as Jarvis Landry breaks ahead of the sticks, ultimately undercutting it, and had a chance for the pick, but just impressive coverage from Nelson here, and shows his ability to play a wide array of coverages, from off coverage to press coverage. Here, showing the ability to undercut the route, and impressive. We'll see it out of the tight here, but Nelson all over this route and continuing to show the ability to shut down top receivers like Odell Beckham Jr., Jarvis Landry, furthering his impressive season. Right here, we'll see Keith Baker's three-step in. Right into his hands. Could have been a pick, but a great play nonetheless. Ultimately, my favorite play from Steven Nelson's 2019 tape came on this crack and replace situation against the Bengals in Week 12. So 3rd and 2 just before half, and the Bengals opt to run a read option with Ryan Finley keeping it to the edge. So receiver cracks down on Terrell Edmonds, meaning Steven Nelson's got to replace his run fit. And not only is this a great tackle by Steven Nelson on the edge, but one thing to note is how quickly he gains ground. So he gains ground, gets to the line of scrimmage, and makes the tackle there as opposed to waiting and allowing Finley to get the first down. So aggressive run defense on the edge, sound run fit by Nelson, and that's one underrated aspect of the Steelers' elite defense in 2019 is both Steven Nelson and Joe Hayden had good run fits and made aggressive tackles on the edge, a key piece to an elite defense in the NFL. So here we're going to take a look at Steven Nelson's lone interception coming just before half against the Buffalo Bills in Week 15. And Bills come out in a heavy set. Steelers counteract that with their base personnel and going with a cover 3 shell. So the play fake ultimately does a good job of drawing in the linebackers and creating a good seam for Allen to throw in front of the secondary and behind the linebackers. But ultimately overthrown, and one could point out pretty bad pass from Allen, but it's your job as a defender in the NFL to capitalize on the quarterback's mistakes, and that's exactly what Nelson does here. Zone eyes, so he's able to keep his eyes on Josh Allen and is in good position on this deflection, creating a splash play, and ultimately doing a good job of getting a nice return here for about 30 yards, getting it up inside the red zone, and continuing the Steelers' 2019 trend of being an opportunistic defense and one of the best in the league in terms of generating takeaways, sacks, splash plays of all kinds. So we'll take a look at it here from the tight. You'll see Nelson does a good job of staying on top of Beasley, is there for the deflection, and does a good job on the return, ultimately bringing it up inside the 20. So not the flashiest of interceptions, but nonetheless, good opportunity, making the most of Josh Allen's mistake here by Nelson. So here's a back-to-back sequence coming out of the timeout late in the fourth quarter against the Bills in a game the Steelers will ultimately go on to lose. And just a characteristic I'd like to highlight from Nelson is cornerbacks always need to have a short memory. So we'll check out this play. Nelson has really good coverage on John Brown, who actually is helped a little bit by an underthrow and is able to come back to the ball, making a big play. And what could have been a real backbreaker for the Steelers here. So we'll see again. Good coverage by Nelson. Sometimes an underthrow can actually hurt you if you're in phase, and John Ross does a great job of adjusting the ball here. But so like I said, short memory is a trait that all cornerbacks need, and we'll look at the next play. They try to go right back at Nelson, who's in cover 3 here, using a bail technique. Bails, walls John Ross off to the sideline, and ultimately makes a great break up in the end zone. So not hanging his hat, ready to come right back the next play, and we'll see it from the tight here. But just a great breakup by Nelson and a great way to come back, really, after getting beat. We'll see. So, again, Ross does a good job trying to readjust to it, but Nelson's there. Gets a hand in, break up in the end zone. So right here, Week 17 against the Ravens, Steven Nelson, top of the screen, and the Ravens try to attack him on a back shoulder fade. Nelson's having none of it. First, lines up and press, gives ground to start before getting into the receiver's chest and allowing him no room with a nice pass breakup. And it's plays like this that we saw from Nelson all season, just consistent coverage against the pass and a very adequate run defender on the edge, an underrated aspect of Nelson's game, but super important in having an elite defense. And Nelson really provides the Steelers with something they haven't had since Ike Taylor in terms of a guy who can take away your number one option consistently and allow Joe Hayden to be a playmaker on the other side. So Steelers have an exciting cornerback room going forward in 2020. Played very well in 2019. Allows the defense to be versatile in a lot of different man and zone looks. Allows the front seven to flourish in the pass rush. And so next up, we'll be reviewing Joe Hayden and eventually going into Mike Hilton and Cam Sutton. let me know below in the comments how you thought the video was, and let me know how the audio sounds, because I can always try out different mics if this is coming in a little scratchy. But Steven Nelson, the underrated performer of the 2019 season, and I'd say the Steelers' number one corner going into 2020. So let's put some respect on my guy's name. Peace.